I stained my lips with jam, and he cleaned it with his finger. He then brought that finger to his own mouth and sucked the sweetness from it, his eyes never leaving mine, his expression unreadable. He did it without saying a word, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. As if he didn't know that such a simple, intimate gesture would detonate a silent bomb in the quiet, orderly landscape of my life. As if he didn't notice the sudden, violent blush that burned my cheeks. I didn't sleep well again that night. Not because of the familiar, heavy breathing of my husband beside me, but because of the man from the bakery, because of what I couldn't stop imagining, because of the hunger I couldn't stop anymore. And it all started so simply. My life wasn't bad, but it wasn't particularly good either. It was beige. A succession of similar days, painted in the muted tones of routine and quiet resignation. My world was circumscribed by the four walls of my home, the aisles of the small-town market, and the sharp metallic scent of my husband's butcher shop. I was Lucia, 39 years old. I had 2 grown children who had already built lives of their own, needing me only for Sunday dinners and occasional loans. And I had a husband, Antonio, who talked more with his knives than he did with me. His voice when he used it was brief, dry, practical. He spoke of accounts, of the price of pork, of a leaky faucet, never cruel but never warm. I hadn't felt like a woman, a desirable woman, in a long time. Not the kind who looks in the mirror and likes the reflection staring back. Not the kind who someone, anyone, truly wants. I felt useful. Correct. A well-oiled cog in a machine I had helped build, and I was silently, profoundly empty. Until one day, the old, dusty bakery at the edge of the town square, which had been closed for years, opened its doors again, and I saw him. He was new. An anomaly in our small, predictable world. He was young, maybe 30, with strong, capable arms dusted with a fine layer of flour. A white apron was tied around a trim waist. He had a 3-day beard that was just shy of unkempt, and eyes that didn't fit in our village. They were clear, serene, the color of the sea on a calm day. They were the eyes of someone who had perhaps read a lot of books, but who also knew without a doubt how to use his hands. He didn't greet me at first, that first day I wandered in, drawn by the intoxicating smell of fresh bread, but he smiled, and his smile, a quiet, knowing thing, had something in it that made me come back. I came back the next day, and the day after that, although I didn't need bread. I bought whatever it was, a bun I gave to the neighbor's dog, a baguette that went stale on my counter. A sweet cake that I didn't even like. I went just to see him knead the dough with a rhythmic, hypnotic strength, to see him cross those powerful arms dusted with flour, to hear his deep voice saying, "Here you are, ma'am," as he handed me my purchase, his fingers brushing mine for a fraction of a second. The bakery smelled of heat, of the brick oven, of something sweet and yeasty that had no name. And he smelled of something even more difficult to describe, of purpose, of life, of a risk that didn't inspire fear but instead made you feel suddenly, exhilaratingly, awake. And so it all began, a new routine woven into the beige tapestry of my old one. A new magnetic presence in the village, a strange, unfamiliar desire that I didn't even dare to name, until that morning, the morning I stained my lips with jam, and he crossed the counter to help me clean my mouth with his finger, and then he took that finger to his mouth, and he sucked it, and I felt that something deep inside me, something that I thought had long ago died and been buried, opened its eyes. After that gesture, that silent, brazen act of intimacy, everything changed. He didn't say anything else, neither did I, but the air between us was no longer the same. When I entered the bakery the next day, I wasn't going for bread anymore. I was going for him, for the unspoken thing that now existed between us, for that invisible electric current that irritated my skin and made my heart beat a little faster. He offered me a freshly made concha, a sweet, shell-shaped bread. "It is still hot," he said, his eyes carefully avoiding mine. "As you like it." I didn't know if he was talking about the bread. I didn't know if he was teasing me, but I took it with both hands, the warmth seeping into my palms as if I were burning. While I was paying for it, our hands barely touched. A second. A spark. I walked home slowly, with the bread in my bag and my heart somewhere else entirely. My husband was in the butcher shop, as always, cutting, weighing, being silent. He looked at me when I came in, a cursory glance, but he didn't say anything. It was as if I were part of the furniture, as if he no longer truly saw me, although I was by his side every single day. That night, I cooked. I served, I cleaned up, we each lay down on our own side of the bed. And when he touched me later, out of routine, out of duty, out of habit, I closed my eyes. And I saw the baker. I saw his strong, flour-dusted arms. I saw his finger taking the sweet jam to his mouth, and I bit my own lips to keep from saying his name, because the pleasure, when it came, didn't come from my husband. It came from a memory, and that I knew was the first true moment of infidelity. Not a carnal infidelity, not yet, but an emotional one, and as I lay there in the darkness, I knew it, and I didn't feel guilty. I felt, for the first time in a very long time, completely and utterly alive. It was not necessary to say anything. We began to talk with our eyes. On the 4th or 5th day of my daily pilgrimages, we were no longer two strangers. We were two silences that recognized each other. I always arrived early, before the village woke up completely, before the sun hit the square with its full force, before anyone could notice that I always chose the exact same time to see him. And he already knew I would come. One morning he asked me how I liked my coffee. I told him with milk and without sugar. The next day, he served it to me in a simple white cup, humming a soft tune. "For you," he said, and it was the first time he didn't address me with the formal "ma'am." I don't know if it was his voice or his way of serving me, or the simple fact that he said "for you" and not "for ma'am," but my fingers trembled as I took the cup. And I couldn't help smiling, a real, genuine smile that had been kept under lock and key for years, a smile that was not for my husband. A smile that only he, the baker, had awakened. When I left that morning, I could feel my back burning. I knew he was looking at me as I walked towards the door. I knew that my body was saying things that my mouth did not yet dare to say, and his bread, always so warm, it seemed as though it were made only for me. That day I did not return home immediately. I took a long walk around the church. Although I was not going to pray, I sat on a cold stone bench and I wondered what I was doing. I, Lucia, a woman of the town, the wife of the butcher, a mother of 2 grown children, I was playing with fire. And the worst thing was not that I could get burned, it was that I desperately wanted to. That night I served wine with dinner. A glass for me, and then another. My husband fell asleep early as always. He snored with his mouth open, his arm hanging off the side of the bed. A hard-working man, a faithful man, a bored man. A boring man. I lit a candle in the kitchen. The low, constant hum of the refrigerator seemed more alive to me than everything that was contained within the walls of my home. I took a piece of paper and a pencil, and without knowing why, I began to draw. First, a silhouette. Then a strong back, some hands, they were his hands. Thick, firm, full of flour. I remembered them on the dough, and I also imagined them on my face, on my lips. I did not know that I could feel something like that at 39. A kind of hunger that was not of the body, but not of the soul either. It was something that was born deep between my legs and went up my spine to the nape of my neck, and it left me breathless. I kept the drawing in a box where I had old family recipes, as if it were a shameful, secret ingredient. But what I felt was not shame, it was expectation. It was as if every day that passed without seeing him, it dried me out. And every day I saw him, it lit me up. The next day, I put on a dress that I had not worn for years, a simple blue sundress that left my shoulders uncovered. My daughter had told me once, "That dress looks young on you, Mom." I looked at myself in the mirror before leaving. I was not young, but I was not dead either. And that morning, when he saw me come in, he stopped dry. He was in the middle of dusting flour on a countertop and his hands just froze in mid-air. And his eyes undressed me before I had said a single word. That day, I did not ask for bread, nor cakes, nor coffee. I just came in, and he already knew that I was not coming for what he was selling. I saw it in the way he calmly closed the door behind me, flipping the little sign to "closed." I saw it in how he took off his flour-dusted apron without haste, in how he approached the counter and looked at me without faking, without pretending. "Today you smell different," he told me, his voice a low rumble. "What do I smell like?" I asked, my own voice a breathy whisper. But my cheeks were burning. I sat on the same wooden bench as always, the one that creaked with the slightest movement, and he, without asking, prepared 2 coffees. He sat in front of me. The silence was filled with the frantic beating of my own heart. "Your husband knows you come here every morning?" he asked, without stopping to look at me, his gaze intense. "My husband doesn't ask anything," I answered, lowering my eyes to my cup, "and I don't tell him everything." The coffee was bitter, but his closeness sweetened everything. "And you?" I dared to ask, looking up at him through my eyelashes. "Do you have someone?" He smiled with the cup in his hands. I had, but not anymore. She couldn't stand the smell of bread on my clothes. I laughed, and it was the most sincere, unrestrained laugh that had come out of my mouth in years. "I can stand it," I told him, without thinking. He put his cup down, and with a low voice, almost like a secret, he told me, "And can I stand the smell of you, even though I shouldn't?" We looked at each other for a long, long time. The clock on the wall marked 8:15. It was time to go home, to the routine. To the lie. I got up, but before leaving, I stopped at the door. "Can I come tomorrow too?" "You can come whenever you want." "And if I don't want bread?" A slow, devastating smile spread across his face. "Then I will bake you excuses." I left with my legs trembling, and with a new certainty. That man was not entirely mine, but I was no longer entirely anyone's either. The next day, I arrived earlier than usual. It was still dark when I crossed the town square, with a jacket on top of my light dress. The streetlights barely illuminated the stonework. No one saw me enter. The bakery was open, the warm, yeasty smell spilling out into the cool morning air. He was there, alone. Waiting for me. He greeted me without words, but his eyes said everything. He had flour on his hands, on his shirt, on the side of his neck. I wanted to take it off with my mouth. We stared at each other, and for the first time there was no coffee, no bread, no conversation. Only silence, and our bodies screaming in that silence. He approached me, backing me up against the counter. His chest rose and fell as if he were containing something for days, for weeks, for years. "Don't say anything," he whispered to me. "Not now." His fingers got tangled in my hair. His breath mixed with mine, and when he kissed me, he did it without asking for permission. He did it as if he had every right in the world. And in that moment I gave it to him. That kiss was not sweet. It was bitter with unspoken longing. It was desperate. It was the bite that we both owed each other from the very first day. His tongue tasted like butter and raw desire. My hands went down his back without fear, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt, and the counter, cold at first, became the altar of a different kind of worship, one that had no prayers but had plenty of moaned, contained sighs. When I separated from him, my wings were half broken, my hair was curled with his touch, and my soul was wide open. He looked at me as if he had just crossed a limit from which he could never go back. "Today you take more than bread," he said in a low voice. "Today you take me," I replied, and I left, knowing that my body no longer belonged only to me, nor to my husband, nor to the past, Now there were two people who knew the taste of each other. After that morning, I could no longer look at myself in the same way in the mirror. Not because I felt dirty, but because I felt intensely, dangerously alive. Every time I passed by the butcher shop, by my husband, something inside me trembled. Not from guilt, but from the stark contrast. He spoke of accounts, of cuts of meat, of the price of pork, and all I could think of was the feeling of breadcrumbs on my bare skin. The baker, Matteo, no longer greeted me with the same distance. His eyes said, "I love you," before his mouth could find an excuse to speak. And the people in the town, they began to notice. A neighbor asked me if I was going to the gym. Another, if I had done something to my hair. "You're glowing, Lucia," they would say. It was his name on my skin. It was his way of touching me without touching me, even in front of others. He would put a little note, written on the wrapper of the bread. "Today, at 6. Behind the bakery, where they don't see us." And I would go. To the small, dusty backyard, where they hung empty bags of flour, and it smelled of fermented yeast. There, his body was my home. His voice, my comfort, his tongue, my punishment, and my forgiveness. Once his hand squeezed my hip so hard during one of our frantic stolen encounters that it left a purple mark. I had to say at home that I had hit myself with the corner of the table. My daughter, Sophia, who was home from the university for the summer, did not seem convinced. She looked at me strangely. "Mom, is something wrong with you?" "Nothing, daughter. Why?" "I don't know. You're different. As if your eyes are shining from the inside." And yes, the eyes shine when they get wet from the inside, when the body remembers something that is still burning. That night, my husband tried to touch me, but my body already had an owner, and it was not him. I rejected him with a flimsy excuse about a headache. And while he slept, frustrated, I caressed myself in silence, remembering the taste of jam and the finger with which he had cleaned it. Sunday was a day of mass, a long dress, a low gaze, a fake smile. I sat on the hard wooden pew with my husband and my daughter next to me, feeling like a statue carved in wet stone. The baker, Matteo, arrived late. He sat 3 rows in front of me. I could see the outline of his neck. I knew exactly how that skin smelled when it sweated for me. I couldn't help it. Throughout the entire Mass, my gaze sought him out, and when he turned, just at the end of the Our Father, our eyes met. It was for half a second, but I felt it deep between my legs. A flash, a silent, "I remember you," in the form of an electric current. My daughter looked at me with bewilderment. My husband muttered the final amen. We left the church together, as a family, as an appearance. But inside, I no longer walked with them. I walked with the promise to return to his bakery the next day, with the memory of the marks of his teeth in my thoughts. Danger has an addictive flavor, and when the routine ceases to be a refuge, even fear becomes exciting. That Wednesday, I entered through the back door of the bakery. He was kneading with his bare torso. He was sweating, and he smelled of yeast, of salt, of a desire that was being cooked over a low heat. As soon as I closed the door, he pushed me against the cool tile wall. "I can't take it anymore, Lucia," he said in a deep, guttural voice. "Every night I dream that you come in like this, without warning, without an escape." "So don't let me escape," I replied, while my hands went around his back as if they belonged there forever. We kissed with hunger, with a clumsiness born of desperation, and with a shared anger at our situation. And just when he got me to the large wooden work table, the bell on the front door rang. We froze, both of us. Breathing hard, my skirt up, his belt unbuttoned. "Stay here," he whispered to me. "Don't make a noise." He ran to the front while I, with my heart hammering in my ears, hid behind a large sack of flour. My breathing was trembling. I heard voices. It was Mrs. Marga, the one from the corner kiosk. "Isn't Lucia around here?" she asked. I held my breath. "Lucia? My client Lucia?" Matteo said, his voice surprisingly calm. No, I haven't seen her today. Ah, I thought she had passed by. Her husband is looking for her. He says she left home more than an hour ago. My blood ran cold, but he answered without a single hesitation. Maybe she went to the market or to the church. Who knows? Well, if you see her, tell her husband is downtown, worried. Sure, I'll tell him. And the door closed. I waited a few seconds. He came back and found me still trembling behind the sack of flour. Your husband suspects? He told me, his face serious. This is no longer a game. It hasn't been since you licked the jam from my lips for the first time, I replied. We looked at each other. We knew we had crossed a line from which there was no return. But that afternoon, we kissed again. We touched each other. We sinned again. Not because we were brave, but because our desire no longer asked us for permission. I started buying bread every day, even when it wasn't necessary, even when we didn't eat it at home anymore. My husband began to notice that I was throwing it away, that I was letting it get hard. Bread again, Lucia? We didn't even touch yesterday's loaf. I got confused, I said. I got used to it. And it was true. It was a habit that burned me between my legs every time I crossed the threshold of his bakery. Sometimes we didn't do anything. We just looked at each other. He would give me a hot loaf, his fingers brushing mine, and that was enough for my body to activate as if I had been naked. The baker had that uncanny ability to warm me up without touching me, to break my will with a single heavy sigh. One day he left me a folded piece of paper inside the bread bag. Today I dreamed of you naked on the work table. You had flour on your back and honey between your thighs. It was hard for me to contain myself. I was in my kitchen with my daughter just a few meters away when I read it, and yet I felt the heat rise from my center all the way to my cheeks. I kept the paper in the back of my apron. That night my husband tried again, and once again I rejected him. Are you cheating on me, Lucia? He asked me suddenly, his voice low, without anger. Is there another one? My heart stopped, not because of guilt, but because he hadn't said it before. I looked him in the eyes and replied with the strongest, most convincing lie I had ever told. No, of course not. He sighed, as if he wanted to believe it, as if he no longer had the strength to investigate any further. He hugged me from behind. His smell no longer moved me. It was another body that I needed. And that night, while I pretended to sleep, I touched myself with fingers that were not his, thinking about the honey, the table, and the next time I would turn myself in silence. Every town has hidden eyes, and in mine they were called Teresa. My neighbor, a widow, owner of a skinny cat and a sharp, venomous tongue. That morning I left my house in a hurry, with my hair still wet, without makeup, without breath. And she was there, sweeping the sidewalk. Lucia, how early today, she said, without stopping to look at me. I'm going to get bread, I said. I forgot to buy it yesterday. Again, she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. But you went yesterday. And the day before yesterday. The smile I threw at her was more of a defense than a greeting. I like it fresh, I replied, squeezing my wallet against my chest. The bakery was 5 steps away from my house, but that morning I felt every step as if I were walking towards a trap. He was waiting for me, as always, and before I could say a word, he pulled me into the corridor behind the oven. Today I have been dreaming of you since 4 a.m, he said into my ear. Shall we dream together? I didn't answer. I just opened his blouse, he lowered his pants, and between the sacks of flour, we made love fast, wild, without even closing the door completely. When we left, we laughed like children, with wet lips and trembling legs. But I did not see that, from the corner, Teresa was still sweeping, with her eyes narrowed, with her lips tight. That night, while I was serving dinner, my daughter asked me something that made my back go cold. Mom, are you okay with Dad? Of course, daughter. Why? I don't know. Teresa told me that women who buy bread every day are hiding something. My husband raised his gaze from his plate. I swallowed my soup. and that night I knew that the town, so silent, no longer slept, that the walls had ears, and that the rumors had begun to cook, slowly, like a bad loaf of bread. The next day, everything smelled strange to me, not the bread, not the sweat of work, but the very air of the town. It was as if someone had baked a secret and had left it to cool in the middle of the square. Everyone could smell it, but no one dared to touch it. Teresa greeted me with a false, sweet smile. The butcher from next door didn't look at me. And even Mrs. Marina, who always asked me for my recipes, avoided me with a clumsy excuse. Rumors didn't need words, just eyes. And that day the whole town had their eyes on me. I came home before noon. My husband wasn't there. My daughter neither. I turned on the radio to silence the silence, but the music didn't cover the inner voices that had started to scream uncomfortable things at me. Why didn't you stop? And if they know, what if he already knows? What if he's just waiting for the right moment to destroy you? I served myself a coffee. I added more sugar than usual. The trembling of my hands wasn't due to a lack of sugar. It was then that a note arrived, tucked under my front door. Without an envelope, without a return address. Just a single sentence written in a fine, elegant script that was not his. You're not the only one who has tasted his bread, and you won't be the last. My legs trembled. The cup fell from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. The hot coffee stained my dress, but I didn't even feel it. A threat. A warning, a cruel game. I ran to the bakery, but it was closed. A handwritten sheet was taped to the door, closed for rest. Today, nothing is being needed. I read it several times, and between those lines I understood what it didn't say. Today I don't want to see you. Or maybe today I'm with someone else. I walked away slowly, naked of certainties, full of questions. That night, I didn't sleep, because when the bread starts to get rancid, it's because someone left the door open. It opened again 2 days later. And I went. Of course I went. I put on a white blouse and some dark pants that made me feel alive. I let my hair down. I perfumed myself with that jasmine scent that he had once said made him hungry. But when I crossed the threshold of the door, his look was not the same. His eyes didn't light up. He didn't bite his lip. He didn't run to hide behind the oven. He just said, "Today there is anise bread. Do you want to try it?" "And you?" I asked, like someone throwing a hook into an empty sea. "Me." "I'm busy. A lot of people these days." And then I saw her. A young woman, just arrived in the village, I presumed. Strong hips, hair gathered in a neat braid, and hands that, apparently, also knew how to knead. "Is she new?" I asked, trying to sound indifferent. "Yes." "She helps me, just for a while." But the way she looked at him, the way he didn't look at me, they told me everything. I bought a single loaf of bread, and when I left, I felt that the whole street was looking at me, as if they knew. That night, in the kitchen of my house, I crumbled that bread onto a plate, and every crumb that fell was a piece of me, of my pride, of my desire. My husband didn't notice anything. He told me about his day, about a new order, about a difficult calf. And I listened. But in my mind, I saw him. Not the man I slept with, but the baker who had taken my sleep away, and who now seemed to be giving it to another. Betrayal is a double-sided coin, and I had just discovered that I wasn't the only one capable of throwing it up in the air. I tried not to go the next day. I tried to stay at home, to clean the curtains, to wash the floor, to even reorganize the drawer of the cupboards. But I couldn't, because the slowest poison is the one you give to yourself. So I put on my shoes and I walked there, like a zombie drawn to a grave. When I arrived, she was alone in the showroom. Her voice was sweet, too sweet. "Lucia, right?" she said. "He has told me a lot about you." I smiled. On the outside. Inside, I fell to the floor. "He's not here?" I asked. "He went out to deliver an order, but he'll be back right away. Do you want to leave him something?" "Yes." I wanted to leave my nails on his back, my screams in his ear, my scent between the bags of flour. But I just said, "I only came for bread, the decent one." She gave me one, wrapped in paper. "Today I made it," she said. I hope you like it. I took it, but before I left, I couldn't help it. Did you also try the raw dough? I asked. She looked at me and smiled, a knowing, victorious smile. Some things taste better that way. Don't you think? I left. And in the middle of the square, I opened the package. I took a piece of bread from it, and I bit it with a savage anger. But I didn't taste him. I didn't taste anything. I ran to the trash can and I threw it away, like someone spitting out a contaminated love. That night, I showered with hot water that burned my skin. But the smell didn't go away, because it wasn't a smell. It was the memory impregnated in my flesh. My husband realized something was wrong. Not about the baker, of course. He didn't have the imagination for that. But about my absence. You're weird, Lucia, he said to me as he brushed his teeth. You don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't even argue with me anymore. Do you need me to yell at you? I asked, my voice flat. No, but I need you to look at me like you used to. I didn't know what to answer, because I didn't look at him as before anymore. Because another shadow had gotten between us, and I didn't know how to get it out. The people kept murmuring. I felt it in the air. I went to walk, to think. I passed by the bakery. It was open. He was alone. I looked at him from the door. He saw me, but he didn't smile. Can I talk to you? I asked, entering without waiting for an answer. It depends, he said. Do you come for bread or for explanations? Both, I answered. He leaned on the counter. He looked tired. Different. Lucia, this got out of hand. For you too? I asked. Yes. But I can't stop my life because you don't know what to do with yours. That hurt, like a physical blow. And her? Does she matter to you? I asked. I don't know, she helps me, she listens to me. She doesn't ask for anything. And I asked for something? You wanted me to give you everything without knowing if you were going to leave something for me. I left without saying more, because when someone starts to bake another type of bread, one no longer has a place in the recipe. That night, the silence at home was so dense that it could be cut with a knife. My husband looked at me with that mixture of suspicion and resignation that only men who know have, but who prefer not to confirm. Are you all right? He asked me while he took off his shirt. Yes, I lied, like every day for weeks. I slept with him, but it was like sleeping with a routine. His hands didn't shake me. His breathing bothered me. His skin had no temperature. I closed my eyes and I saw him, the baker, who was now kneading other bodies, while I untied myself between sheets that no longer touched me. The next day I went to the town market. I needed to distract myself, to forget. But the looks didn't help, the whispers, the twisted smiles. Look, there goes the one who ran out of bread and cake. It was him, said someone shamelessly. I turned around. I didn't see who said it, but it didn't matter because it didn't hurt me anymore. The scandal didn't hurt me anymore. The emptiness hurt me. I decided not to go through his bakery anymore, nor look at his door, nor taste his crumbs. I went home with a bag of fruits and sat in the kitchen, alone, as before, as always. I made myself a tea and for the first time in weeks I cried. Not for him, but for me, because a woman can forgive many things, but she cannot forgive herself for having lost herself. Days passed, many, with little flavor. The bread didn't matter anymore, nor the baker, or that was what I repeated to myself. But there was something worse than the desire I couldn't satisfy. It was the absence of desire, the body turned off, the soul mute. My husband noticed the change. What's wrong now, Lucia? Does something hurt you? Nothing, I said. That's what I feel, nothing. And it was true. I got up, I dressed, I cooked, I attended the garden, but all without fire, as if I had turned off the oven inside. One afternoon, I decided to do something new. I went to visit Clara, a neighbor older than me, who always told me about the embroidery courses that the women of the town did. Is something wrong with you, Lucia? She asked as soon as she saw me. I'm lost, I think, I admitted. She looked at me for a long time and then she said, It's not that you got lost, Lucia. It's that you stood still for a long time in the same place, and the world moved on without you. I sat with them, I listened to their stories, I laughed a little, and for the first time I thought that maybe, just maybe, the baker was nothing more than a spark in a dark night, not the whole bonfire. When I came home, I opened a notebook and I started writing. I don't want to be the woman who waits for crumbs. I want to be the one who kneads her own bread, with her own hands, with her own fire. That night I slept alone, on purpose, and I dreamed of another Lucia, one I didn't know yet, but who was already waking up. One afternoon, while I was laying the clothes on the patio, I heard the doorbell. I went without hurry. I didn't wait for anyone. When I opened the door, it was him, the baker. Alone, with dark circles under his eyes and his hair longer than I could remember. "Lucia," he said. "Can we talk?" I looked at him, without knowing what to feel. He wasn't the same anymore. Neither was I. "Come in," I answered, almost without thinking. We sat in the kitchen, the same place where so many silences had swallowed me. "She left me," he said. "The girl I was with. She left the village." "And what does that have to do with me?" I asked. "Nothing." "Or everything, I don't know. But I thought you deserved to know." I observed him. "He didn't come to seduce me. He came broken. And now what do you want?" "To start something again?" "No," he said. "I want to understand what we did, and if you also feel that we failed." His words took me by surprise. "I don't know if I failed you," I said, "but I did fail myself." There was silence, one different from before, one where there was understanding, not guilt. "Do you want a tea?" I offered. "Yes," he answered, "but only if you make it." I smiled, maybe out of habit, maybe out of nostalgia. I prepared 2 cups. We sat face to face. We didn't talk about love or desire. We talked about the desire to continue living, even if the village is small, even if the mistakes are big, even if one no longer has anyone to blame. When he left, I felt light, not because of him, but because of me. Because for the first time I could see him without needing him. A few more days passed. The baker didn't come back, not even to say hello, and I didn't expect him to. But something was still going on, that strange feeling of having closed a door without knowing if you closed it completely or if you simply gently pushed it just in case. My husband seemed calmer lately. I don't know if because he had given up understanding me or because he also had his own silences. "Do you want us to go to the river on Sunday?" he asked me at dinner. "The 2 of us?" "Yes, we haven't been there in years." He surprised me, and I accepted. The river was as usual, with that rumor that seems to speak in a low voice, but that tells you truths. We sat on the shore. He offered me a piece of bread, one of those from the market that didn't taste like anything. But that one, it did. Maybe because it didn't come with promises, or with insinuations, or with sweat at midnight, only with a quiet hand and an old but sincere look. "Do you love me, Lucia?" he asked. I took my time to answer. "I respect you, Antonio," I told him. "And I thank you, and that's enough. Today, yes. Tomorrow, I don't know." He sighed, and that was all. There were no complaints, no supplications, no kisses, just a tacit agreement between 2 tired people who could still share a piece of bread, even if the fire didn't burn like before. That Monday, I woke up early, earlier than usual. Before my husband, before the neighbor's rooster. It was as if something was pushing me from inside. I went to the kitchen. I looked for flour, yeast, salt, water. I kneaded with strength, with anger, with tenderness, with the desire to be me again. While the dough was rising, I looked in the mirror. It wasn't the same woman, not the one of the forbidden desire, not the obedient wife, not the woman on pause. It was another one, new, more complete, more awake. The bread grew, like me. I baked it, and the aroma invaded the house, my house. My husband woke up to the smell and came to the kitchen. "Did you make bread?" he asked. "Yes." Finally. We sat down at the table. I cut a slice for him. I took another one for myself. "And the baker?" he asked without looking at me. I thought about it for a second. Then I smiled. He no longer looks at me differently. I paused. Now, I look at myself differently. He didn't say anything. It wasn't necessary, because at that moment I knew that not all endings need applause. Some only need silence and warm bread made with your own hands. The news in the villages runs faster than hot bread, and more so if they smell of scandal. It started with looks, then murmurs in the butcher shop, sentences cut short in the bakery, and in the end it came to the square like everything inevitable. They say that Lucia and the baker, they say that the butcher knows, they say that the daughter saw them, they said. They always say. I listened to them unintentionally, at the park benches, at the market, at mass, and for the first time I didn't bow my head. I didn't rush my step, I didn't change the sidewalk. I crossed paths with Clara, the neighbor. "They say that you did what no one dared," she said to me without a fuss. "And what do you think?" I asked. "I think you still have the most difficult part left," she said. To forgive yourself, and then to decide. I came back home with those words stuck in my head. Forgive myself. For what exactly? For wanting more? For daring to try? For letting myself be dragged? For feeling alive, even if it was in a clandestine way? That night, I didn't sleep. I wrote, a lot, on loose sheets, on napkins, on the margins of an old calendar. I wrote what I felt, what I missed, what hurt me, what I didn't say in time, and what I never knew how to explain. At dawn, I met my daughter in the kitchen. She looked at me. I looked at her, too. "Did you see?" I asked her. "Yes, Mom." "And what did you think?" "That it was finally you," she said, "even if it hurt." I didn't say anything else. I hugged her. And she, despite knowing everything, didn't let go of me. That was redemption. That was peace. That was a beginning. After breakfast, I went out to town. Loose hair, a firm look. I went to the market, to the bakery, to the square, and when the looks got stuck on me, I didn't tremble anymore, nor did I smile nervously. I just went. I walked. And I understood that the real scandal was not desire. It was freedom. That day I decided to go to the bakery. Not for him, for me. I needed to look the man in the eye who, without knowing it, had lit a fire inside me, and see if there were still ashes, or if what was burning now was just my own reflection. The bakery was empty. The aroma of freshly baked bread floated like a warm promise. He was behind the counter, arranging trays. When he heard me enter, he stopped, and he didn't turn around immediately. "I knew you would come sooner or later," he said without turning around. "And I knew you would say something like that," I answered, my voice firm. Then he turned around thinner, or maybe it was just the guilt that made him look smaller. "Did you come to reproach me?" he asked. "I came," I said, "to say goodbye to the idea of you that I had made for myself." He looked down. "And what was that idea?" "That you were the answer. That your bread healed me, that your desire validated me." I walked to the counter. I didn't touch it. I didn't provoke it. I just looked at him with the truth in my hands. "But the truth," I continued, "is that I didn't need someone to desire me to feel alive. I needed to wake up, and you were just the alarm clock." He didn't say anything. He took out a loaf of bread. He offered it to me. His fingers trembled. "From the last dough I will ever knead here," he said. "I'm leaving the village." That did surprise me, not because it hurt me, but because I understood it. "Why?" I asked. "Because I'm not welcome here anymore," he said. "Because here everything ferments too quickly, the gossip, the looks, the hate." I took the bread. It was hot, and it smelled of farewell. "Thank you for knocking on my door that night," I said. "Thank you for opening it," he replied. We looked at each other. There was no kiss, no hug, no lament. just the certainty that there are things that don't need to continue to have been real. I left the bakery with the loaf in my hands. The sun was high. And for the first time, I didn't feel cold inside. That night, I broke the bread on the table. My husband looked at me. He didn't ask where it came from. He didn't judge. He just said, "It's good." "It tastes different." "It's from the last dough he kneaded," I said. "And now?" he asked. "Now," I said, meeting his gaze, "we need our own." He smiled. A small, tired but real smile. I did too. And although there was no passion like before, no hidden fire, no stolen kisses, there was something older, calmer, firmer. Complicity, resignation maybe, but without resentment. And that, in some marriages, is worth more than a fleeting desire. The week went by without thunder, like when a storm has swept everything away and the sky, tired, finally stays still. The baker left the village, one morning with no noise, no letter, no final loaf of bread, just the metallic shutter down over the bakery window. And a small note on the mailbox. "Thank you for once looking at me with a sincere hunger. I didn't need more." The rumors were dissolved like old foam. The people of the village quickly forget the scandals when there are fairs, baptisms, or new misfortunes to talk about, and my life resumed a different course. My husband didn't talk about it anymore, but every morning he prepared my coffee without me asking for it, and every night he would light the stove a little earlier so that the kitchen wouldn't be cold when I came in. Love sometimes doesn't come back as you knew it. It comes back like a blanket woven with new, different threads. It doesn't burn, but it covers. One afternoon, I went out to hang clothes in the courtyard. The air smelled of wet earth and something I didn't know how to name at first, until I realized it was the scent of my own tranquility. My daughter appeared behind me with a question in her eyes. "Mom, do you regret it?" I looked at her. It took me a long time to answer, but not because I didn't know what to say, but because for the first time I wanted to say it right. "I don't regret having felt what I felt," I told her. "I regret having forgotten about myself for so long, for not having listened to myself before, for not having spoken when everything inside me was screaming in silence." She hugged me, strongly, as if in her arms she was confirming to me that the past no longer had power over me. That night I lit a candle, I put it in front of the window, and I prayed. Not for forgiveness, I had already sought that in the most difficult place of all, inside myself. I prayed for strength, for peace, and for all those women who feel guilty for simply seeking themselves. I looked up at the sky. "Thank you, my God," I whispered, "for giving me another chance to live without hiding." The bread at home was made by hand again, without secrets, without double intentions, only flour, water, salt, and time, a lot of time. Because the best things, the things that are really worth it, are cooked over a low heat, like love, like the soul, like this story.